From Roots to Global Rhythm, a brief history of jazz music. Welcome to Stereopedia, your gateway to knowledge, sound, and story. Here we break down complex ideas, explore hidden truths, and amplify voices that matter. Whether it's science, psychology, history, or culture, if it echoes through time and thought, you'll find it here. Plug in, tune your mind. This is Stereopedia.
From Roots to Global Rhythm, a brief history of jazz music. Jazz is more than just a musical genre, it is a dynamic, evolving cultural expression rooted in African American history and identity. From its beginnings in the melting pot of New Orleans to its influence on global music culture, jazz has continually reinvented itself while maintaining its improvisational spirit and emotional depth. This article explores the origins, key developments, and lasting impact of jazz music across the world. Few musical genres have shaped the modern soundscape like jazz. Known for its improvisation, syncopated rhythms, and expressive individuality, jazz has continually transformed since its emergence in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. This article traces the genre's journey from its birth in New Orleans to its role as a symbol of freedom and innovation around the world. 1. Origins. The birth of jazz in New Orleans. Jazz emerged in New Orleans, Louisiana, a city famed for its rich cultural blend of African, Caribbean, European, and Creole influences. Around the turn of the 20th century, African American musicians combined elements of ragtime, blues, spirituals, and marching band music, creating a new, improvisational style. Key to early jazz was its oral tradition and communal approach to music making. Instruments like the cornet, clarinet, and trombone were staples, often accompanied by piano, banjo, and upright bass. The genre was popularized in venues such as Storyville, the city's red light district, where bands played for dancers, revelers, and tourists. Jazz was born in the vibrant cultural melting pot of New Orleans in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, a city shaped by its French, Spanish, African, Caribbean, and Creole heritage. This unique blend of cultures laid the groundwork for a revolutionary new musical style. At the heart of jazz's origin was the African American community, whose musical traditions such as spirituals, field hollers, blues, and West African rhythms merged with European harmonic and melodic structures. New Orleans was one of the few cities in the post-Civil War South where people of different races and backgrounds regularly interacted. This cross-cultural environment, combined with a thriving nightlife scene, created fertile ground for musical experimentation. Street parades, church services, social clubs, and dance halls all served as stages for this emerging sound. A key element in early jazz was improvisation, the spontaneous creation of melodies over a repeating harmonic structure. This improvisational style drew heavily from the blues and ragtime traditions, while incorporating the syncopated rhythms and call-and-response patterns of African music. Jazz musicians often developed their skills by ear, rather than formal training, which led to a raw, energetic, and highly individualistic style. One of the most important early centers of jazz was Storyville, the city's red light district, where musicians played in clubs, brothels, and bars. Here, pioneers such as Buddy Bolden, Jelly Roll Morton, and later Louis Armstrong began to shape what we now recognize as jazz. Instruments commonly used in marching bands like the cornet, clarinet, trombone, tuba, and drums were adapted for smaller ensembles and improvised performance, forming the basis of the classic New Orleans jazz band. New Orleans jazz was characterized by collective improvisation, where each instrument played its own melodic line simultaneously, creating a rich, polyphonic texture. This sound captured the joy, struggle, and soul of a community expressing itself in a rapidly changing world. Thus, jazz was not born in a concert hall or academic setting, but in streets, dance halls, and neighborhood gatherings, places where music was not just entertainment, but a vital part of life. From these humble beginnings, jazz would soon travel upriver and across the globe, forever changing the soundscape of modern music. 2. The Jazz Age, 1920s and the Rise of Swing. The 1920s, often called the Jazz Age, marked a transformative period when jazz music exploded from its regional roots in New Orleans and the South into a national cultural phenomenon. This decade coincided with dramatic social and economic changes in the United States, including the aftermath of World War I, urbanization, and the rise of the Roaring Twenties, all of which helped jazz capture the spirit of youthful rebellion and modernity. During this time, many African Americans moved north in the Great Migration, seeking better economic opportunities and escaping Jim Crow segregation. Cities like Chicago, New York, Detroit, and Kansas City became vibrant centers for jazz. The bustling nightlife of Harlem, in particular, fueled the genre's growth through venues like the Cotton Club and the Apollo Theater, which showcased emerging jazz stars and attracted diverse audiences. The decade also saw the rise of recording technology and radio broadcasting, which allowed jazz to reach millions of listeners far beyond live performance venues. These new platforms helped popularize the music and establish legendary musicians as national celebrities. One of the defining figures of the jazz age was Louis Armstrong, whose innovative trumpet playing, charismatic stage presence, and distinctive vocal style revolutionized jazz. Armstrong's solos introduced a new level of technical mastery and emotional expression, emphasizing individual improvisation and transforming jazz into a soloist's art form. Simultaneously, the 1920s witnessed the beginnings of swing music, a style characterized by a strong rhythmic drive, danceable beats, and larger ensembles or big bands. These bands typically featured sections of trumpets, trombones, saxophones, and rhythm instruments, delivering a fuller, more orchestrated sound. The swing era proper would peak in the 1930s and 40s, but its roots trace back to the innovations and growing popularity of the 1920s. Jazz during this time was both a soundtrack and a symbol of social change. It represented freedom, modernity, and cultural blending, challenging racial barriers even as segregation persisted. Though many African American musicians found greater financial success in predominantly white bands or venues, jazz remained a powerful expression of African American creativity and resilience. The jazz age ended with the Great Depression, but the music's energy and innovations laid the foundation for the swing era and the diverse directions jazz would take in the decades ahead. 3s, bebop and beyond. The rebellion of the 1940s, 50s. The 1940s marked a radical turning point in the history of jazz with the emergence of bebop, a style that dramatically redefined the music's direction and purpose. Bebop was a rebellion against the commercialized, dance-oriented big band swing music that had dominated the previous decades. It was pioneered by a small group of virtuoso musicians, most notably Charlie Parker, alto saxophone, Dizzy Gillespie, trumpet, Thelonious Monk, piano, and Max Roach, drums, who sought to elevate jazz to a form of artistic expression rather than mere entertainment. Unlike swing, bebop featured fast tempos, complex chord progressions, and intricate melodies that required advanced technical skill and deep theoretical understanding. The emphasis shifted from ensemble playing to solo improvisation, where musicians explored new harmonic ideas and pushed the boundaries of traditional jazz forms. This made bebop more challenging for casual audiences and less suitable for dancing, marking its rise as music for listening and intellectual engagement. Bebop's harmonic innovations introduced chord substitutions, extended harmonies, and the use of the altered scale, enriching the jazz vocabulary and influencing virtually every subsequent style. The music's complexity also reflected the social realities of the time. Its creators were often African American artists, asserting their individuality and creativity in the face of racial segregation and limited economic opportunities. Following bebop, jazz continued to evolve rapidly, with several important offshoots. Cool jazz emerged in the late 1940s and 1950s as a more relaxed, lyrical, and arranged style, popularized by artists like Miles Davis, Chet Baker, and the birth of the cool sessions. It counterbalanced bebop's intensity with smoother melodies and softer dynamics. Hard bop grew out of bebop with a renewed focus on blues, gospel, and rhythm and blues influences, emphasizing emotional depth and groove. Key figures included Art Blakey, Horace Silver, and Sonny Rollins. Modal jazz, pioneered by Miles Davis and John Coltrane, explored improvisation based on musical modes rather than complex chord changes, opening new possibilities for expression and freedom. The 1940s and 50s were thus a time of explosive creativity and diversification in jazz, with musicians pushing artistic boundaries and redefining the genre's identity. Bebop and its successors laid the groundwork for modern jazz, influencing not only jazz itself but also rock, funk, and later fusion styles. This era represented jazz's rebellion against convention and its assertion as a serious, sophisticated art form, a legacy that continues to inspire musicians and listeners around the world. For fusion and global expansion, 1960s, 80s. The period from the 1960s through the 1980s was one of profound transformation for jazz, marked by the advent of jazz fusion and a remarkable global expansion of the genre. This era not only broke down musical boundaries, but also extended jazz's influence far beyond its American roots, establishing it as a truly international art form. Jazz fusion, a bold new hybrid. By the late 1960s, many jazz musicians were experimenting with the sounds of rock, funk, soul, and electronic music, reflecting broader cultural shifts and advances in technology. This experimentation gave birth to jazz fusion, a genre that combined jazz's improvisational complexity with the electric instruments and rhythmic drive of popular contemporary music. One of the pioneers of fusion was Miles Davis, whose albums like Bitches Brew, 1970, broke new ground with extended electric jams, layered textures, and a freer approach to form. Davis's use of electric guitar, bass, and keyboards alongside traditional jazz instruments expanded the sonic palette and attracted younger, rock-oriented audiences. Other key fusion artists included Herbie Hancock, who incorporated funk grooves and synthesizers into his work, notably in albums like Headhunters. Chick Corea, known for his virtuosic keyboard playing and work with the band Return to Forever. A Weather Report, featuring Joe Zawinul and Wayne Shorter, who combined jazz improvisation with world music rhythms. John McLaughlin's Mahavishnu Orchestra, which blended jazz, rock, and Indian classical influences into a high-energy, complex style. Fusion was both celebrated and criticized. Some jazz purists felt it diluted the genre's essence, while others embraced its innovation and accessibility. Nonetheless, fusion revitalized jazz, making it relevant to new generations and expanding its commercial reach. Technological advances and new sounds. The 1960s to 80s also saw rapid advancements in music technology. The widespread use of electric guitars, synthesizers, electric basses, and effects pedals transformed jazz's sound. Musicians experimented with multi-tracking, studio effects, and amplification, blurring the lines between live performance and studio production. These technological tools allowed jazz artists to explore new timbres and soundscapes, pushing the boundaries of traditional acoustic jazz. Synthesizers introduced a futuristic, often atmospheric quality to jazz fusion, while electric instruments gave it a raw, more aggressive edge. Global expansion. Jazz around the world. Jazz's reach extended well beyond the United States during this period. Cities in Europe, Japan, Latin America, and Africa developed their own vibrant jazz scenes, blending local musical traditions with jazz forms. In Europe, countries like France, Germany, and the Netherlands saw the rise of prominent jazz festivals and recording labels. European jazz musicians often integrated classical influences and avant-garde experimentation, creating distinct styles. Artists like Jan Garbarek, Norway, and Enrico Rava, Italy, gained international acclaim. In Japan, jazz became hugely popular post-World War II. Japanese musicians mastered American jazz idioms and developed their own voices. The country also became a hub for jazz recordings and live performances, with a strong fan base. Latin America contributed unique rhythms and styles, such as bossa nova from Brazil, which combined samba and jazz harmonies, popularized by artists like Antonio Carlos Jobim and João Gilberto. In Africa, jazz interacted with indigenous musical forms and political movements. Musicians like Hugh Masekela and Fela Kuti fused jazz with African rhythms and used it as a tool for social commentary. Jazz as a vehicle for social and political expression. During these decades, jazz was not only evolving musically but also taking on heightened social and political significance. The civil rights movement in the US and decolonization movements worldwide found echoes in jazz's spirit of freedom and resistance. Musicians used jazz to address issues of racial equality, identity, and human rights. This is evident in the works of artists like Charles Mingus, Max Roach, and Nina Simone, who blended jazz with activism. The fusion era and global expansion of jazz from the 1960s to the 1980s represent a period of bold experimentation, cross-cultural dialogue, and technological innovation. Jazz transformed from an American art form to a global language, absorbing diverse influences while maintaining its core values of improvisation, creativity, and expression. This period laid the foundation for many contemporary jazz styles and demonstrated the genre's remarkable ability to adapt, innovate, and unite musicians and audiences worldwide. 5. Modern jazz. Innovation meets tradition. From the late 20th century into the 21st century, jazz has continued to evolve, balancing a respect for its rich traditions with a bold embrace of innovation. This era, often referred to as modern jazz, is characterized by a diverse range of styles that reflect the genre's ongoing dialogue between past and present, local and global, acoustic and electronic. Reinvigorating tradition. Modern jazz musicians often draw deeply from the genre's historical roots, paying homage to bebop, hard bop, modal jazz, and other classic styles. At the same time, they reinterpret these traditions through contemporary sensibilities. For example, many artists maintain the emphasis on improvisation and complex harmonies that defined earlier jazz while incorporating influences from other genres. This reverence for tradition helps preserve jazz's identity and ensures that new innovations remain connected to the music's core values. Musicians like Wynton Marsalis have been prominent advocates for this approach, emphasizing the importance of mastering jazz's historical language. Marsalis's work with the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra highlights both preservation and creative reinterpretation of classic jazz repertoire, blending genres and expanding horizons. Modern jazz is marked by an extraordinary openness to other musical styles. Jazz has absorbed and integrated elements from hip-hop, R&B, funk, electronic music, classical, world music, and even indie rock. This blending expands jazz's expressive possibilities and attracts new audiences. Artists such as Robert Glasper and Kamasi Washington fuse jazz with hip-hop and neo-soul, creating music that is both rhythmically dynamic and deeply rooted in African-American cultural expression. Kamasi Washington's sprawling albums have brought jazz to younger listeners and helped revitalize the genre's cultural relevance. Electronic music and production techniques have also become central to modern jazz, with musicians using looping, sampling, and synthesizers to create layered, textured soundscapes. Groups like Snarky Puppy combine virtuosic jazz playing with elements of funk and world music, reaching wide audiences through both live performances and online platforms. Global influence and cross-cultural collaboration. Modern jazz reflects the global nature of contemporary music. Jazz musicians from around the world contribute unique perspectives, often blending their indigenous musical traditions with jazz's improvisational framework. Instruments and rhythms from Africa, Latin America, Asia, and the Middle East have enriched jazz's sonic palette, while collaborations across continents showcase its universal language. This global fusion highlights jazz's adaptability and enduring appeal. Jazz education and institutional support. Another key feature of modern jazz is its institutionalization and academic presence. Jazz education has grown significantly, with numerous university programs, conservatories, and festivals dedicated to teaching and celebrating the music. This formalization has helped preserve jazz's technical and theoretical foundations while encouraging innovation. It has also provided a platform for young musicians to develop their craft and push jazz into new directions. The role of technology and media. Technology continues to shape modern jazz's evolution. Digital platforms allow artists to reach global audiences instantly, while high-quality recording techniques capture nuanced performances. Social media and streaming services have democratized access to jazz, enabling niche subgenres to flourish and fostering communities of listeners and creators worldwide. Modern jazz is a vibrant, multifaceted art form that honors its past while embracing the future. Its blend of tradition and innovation, local roots and global influences, acoustic mastery, and electronic experimentation ensures that jazz remains a powerful medium of artistic expression and cultural dialogue. As jazz continues to evolve, it maintains its core spirit, a celebration of improvisation, creativity, and human connection qualities that have defined the genre for over a century and promise to inspire generations to come. Jazz is not just a musical style, but a philosophy of expression, freedom, and collaboration. Its history reflects broader societal changes from the struggles of African Americans to the global embrace of diversity in sound. As it continues to adapt and inspire, jazz proves that true artistry knows no boundaries, only new directions.